Pure Ambition family, welcome back to another episode of the show. My guest today is a man that I am extremely grateful for, and had it not been for him, I may not have been here talking to you guys today. My guest is Harry Gray. Harry is a very, very close friend of mine. He is the co-host of the Mafia podcast, and he is the co-founder of Noble Origins, which is an animal-based protein powder that I crush every single day. Harry was there for me the day that I lost my life on the track, called the ambulance for me. He was the one who got into my emergency contact to call my mom. And I won't spoil this amazing episode and this incredibly powerful conversation. Harry is a guy who I looked up to, really is like a big brother in my life. And I am so extremely grateful for him, for everything that he's doing in this world to make it a better place. And I'm just grateful for him on this conversation. Hold on to your seat because this one goes deep. Love you guys. Now let's get into it with Harry.
It's funny. Matt was like, "What are you guys going to talk about?" I was like, "I don't know.
We're just gonna hang out.
Everything. We're just gonna chill. We're just gonna chop it up."
There's something about this room that's very calming. Like, I don't know what it is. I feel like our podcast studio is very intimidating. Like, when the guest sits down, I'm like, I feel like I'm like about to like interview them for their like candidacy like to be president of the United States. This room is totally chill. So
Well, you got people like right outside the room, like hammering away at their
serious work.
Meanwhile, we're just in there talking about meat.
Yeah, right. Like, they're doing their full-time day job, just stressing out, and we're in there talking about growing steaks. So it's not a bad life.
No, I'd much rather be talking about steaks.
Yeah, 100%. Or barbecue.
Or barbecue. Yeah. So you think La Barbecue, best barbecue in Austin?
Look, if any of your listeners are coming to Austin, I have a few recommendations.
Please list them off.
One is definitely go to La Barbecue before Blacks. 2, KG Barbecue is the best barbecue in town. Have you had it?
No, you've told me about it like 3 times.
You gotta go.
All right.
Like Matt, who's one of our buddies here, Matt Wagner, he totally just doxed him, but he recommended it to us. And when he was telling us about it, his eyes were like blown up. I'm like, it can't be that good. And it's like this Egyptian style barbecue.
Whoa.
And the founder just won a James Beard Award for the barbecue. And it's interesting because he came here from Egypt, worked under Franklin's, and then I think he worked at La Barbecue for a bit, and he was going to go back to Egypt and bring Texas barbecue to Egypt, and he decided to stay here and bring Egyptian flair to barbecue.
Whoa.
It's unbelievable.
So what is Egyptian flair to barbecue?
It's like there's a lot of lamb.
Okay.
The rice has like cranberries and almonds in it. There's a lot of spices that aren't, like, I would say just like they're unique. They're just totally different to what you would expect from like barbecue spice. So there's something to what they're doing at KG. Like, it's going to be a staple. They'll have like a brick and mortar spot soon, but right now it's just a food truck. I actually think it's up near you. So you got to go. And then the other restaurant, this is my favorite spot, is Intero. And yeah, it's just unbelievable.
Kat and I almost went to Intero the other night. Didn't end up going there. Went to Canje.
Okay.
Which is like Caribbean food.
Yeah.
And it was ridiculous, dude.
I've been there.
Wild boar, the jerk chicken.
Dude.
Oh my god.
The chicken there is incredible.
Everybody, I don't know if I've ever been to I don't think I've gotten food in the city and I've been like, yeah, that wasn't that good.
Yeah, there's just so many good restaurants in Austin, and there's a good amount that are like CETO free. Someone was telling me about a hamburger spot that just opened.
Yes.
Have you been there yet?
Yes, so good.
We gotta go.
I went on opening night.
Really?
Dude, a burger's like $7.50.
That's huge.
And they fry their fries in tallow.
I'm in.
Come on.
Let's go. What are we doing here?
Dude.
Should we hit stop and
just go get burgers?
Yeah. Well, they have a taco stand next door, and I think it's the best tacos in town too.
Quanto's Tacos.
Yeah, Quanto's is
very good too.
Ridiculous. So yeah, Austin's just loaded with great little restaurant spots, and a lot of them are like hidden gems. I feel like KG. It's like it's a food truck up off Manor Road, and it's kind of unassuming. You wouldn't expect much, but it is so good.
What was your introduction to this way of eating that you now have adopted? A little carnivore, animal based. I know keto, like you don't have one that you traditionally stick to.
Yeah.
Based on whatever season of life you're in, or whatever your current goals are, whether in health and fitness. What was your introduction to all this?
Yeah, so in college, I would say even before that, in high school, I was like super focused on performance for baseball. So I was lucky enough to be a part of a gym back in DC. It was called Prospects, and they had a massive warehouse, and the trainers were like the best in the area. And they were ahead of their time because they were working under kind of this school of training that a lot of baseball players know about, Eric Cressey Performance. And so they took a lot of his teachings and were teaching them there. And I was there like every day training for baseball. And most of that was like weightlifting and speed training. And that was really where I developed my love for training, like just going in there every day, learning from them, teaching me all these little nuances about the body, about different training protocols. And they were really dialed in on nutrition and diet. But for me, I think it took a little bit longer for that nutrition stuff to germinate and actually for me to start developing my own interest there. Because when you're a high schooler, you're just like, I can just eat whatever I want and get away with it and still be fine. So I got to college, and my freshman year, me and a buddy were just like, let's just go all in on this paleo diet. I'd heard about it from Tim Ferriss. And for probably like better part of 3 months, we were like, no booze, which is definitely like the weird thing to do in college. I was like such a loser.
You're an alien.
Yeah. But it was like winter in Boston. So I'm like, it's probably like for most people a good reason to drink. I was like, this just is like kind of depressing.
I was
So
gonna say, dude, Northeast,
Bro.
that's booze central.
yeah, which I mean definitely gets into a deeper part of my story, which is like, I was in Boston for a long time, which is obviously an amazing sports culture city, an incredible city, but a big part of that, or a big part of what comes with that, is the drinking culture, which I just never, like, I totally participated in it, but I was like always like, this is just so not me. And so when college came around, I was really just trying to take things seriously, and the diet was like that next degree for me to figure out how I could improve on the field. And so the paleo diet for me, I was like legitimately as strong as I've ever been as a 19-year-old, and just like feeling amazing through diet. And that was like the light bulb moment where it's like, okay, this is a way to really like outpace people who I'm competing against, or even just like teammates that, you're training against and trying to like get a starting spot on the team. Like this is just kind of like low hanging fruit. If I can win in this arena, it'll help me in practice and in games. So I was just all in on the paleo diet then. And then I kind of lost the drive for it after I had stopped playing baseball, to like, I was still mindful of what I was putting in my body, but it became easier not to be, just being in the corporate world and having a lot more temptation around just like junk food and not being as active, honestly. And so I definitely had a period where it was not a priority in my life. And then when I came back to it was right before COVID. I was just, again, kind of in that tinkering mode, wanting to experiment with diet. And I love the self-experimentation process, because it gives you such honest information that you yourself have to validate. And so I was like doing the keto diet, and after a week of just strict, like high fat, decent amount of protein, low carb, I was like in the best cognitive state I've ever been, in terms of like thinking very, very clearly, like having all these amazing creative thoughts. I was walking a bunch, getting a ton of sunlight. And I kind of just came to the conclusion that like I can't go back to what I was doing before, like in that little interim period between playing sports and having that second light bulb moment, I will say, with doing the keto diet. And at that point, I was ordering a bunch of food from farms. Like I just went all in, because COVID had hit and everything was locked down, no gyms. And I was able to just take a step back from my life of like taking the bus to work and just being in that hamster wheel of hour bus to work, come back, and just that repetitive nature of what you're doing. And it just gave me that unlock of like going back to default mode. And that was just cooking a bunch of my meals, ordering from farms, getting really, really high quality stuff. And once you kind of build that, or once you see the positive benefits of what that will do for not just like the looks of, eating right, but just the feeling of waking up at 5 a.m., like feeling like you already had 10 cups of coffee because you're eating right and doing things the right way, is like irreplaceable. And so that was like how I felt for 3-4 months of just being super dialed in. And I was like, yeah, there's no turning back. And that was the beginning of the snowball for everything.
And so this was 2019, 2020-ish. You're how
Yeah.
old at this time?
I was 25.
Okay,
25.
25. So a couple years out of college.
Yeah.
I know you played baseball for a couple years at Babson,
Yeah.
and then you went abroad, came back. I'm curious too, what was the food like abroad? I hear so much about when people go abroad and then they come back and then their guts get all messed up, and it's like, is our food system, is our quality of food really like that bad compared to that of like Europe?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I've had two experiences abroad. One was studying abroad in Italy, and then one in Amsterdam. And my experiences there, both times, there was a heavy food component because Europeans are so interested by how Americans approach food and our relationship with it. Because they just like, they're like amazed at how we eat. Like I remember one instance where my host brother like watched me eat something sweet before I ate something savory. And he's like this Italian guy, and he's like, what are you doing? Like, and I was like, what, dude? Like, I'm having like something, and he's like, no, you do, like, you don't do that. That's not how, like, you save the sweet for the end. So, anyways, yeah, my experience there. I mean, they are much more focused on local food, which I think is kind of just the key because they're more reliant on the guy up the street who's growing stuff in a smaller manner. And in the U.S., we just have an abundance of food coming from these big factory farms or factory systems of making food. And even, you know, it's like factory farm cattle is not the same as grass fed. And that just like doesn't really exist over there. And so the quality of food is way better. And my experience in Amsterdam was, they have a lot of Western influence, and so there is a lot of processed food there. But everyone there is really slim because they bike everywhere. They're super active, and yeah, I mean they definitely eat processed food and more junk food than they do in Italy. But they're, I mean, they're very very mindful of their health and they take it really seriously. So their portions are smaller. They know to really just not overindulge. I just don't think that is as top of mind in the U.S. Like I feel like we're kind of in this like unconscious state when it comes to how we approach food.
Mm. Dude, what I love about your story too is getting to know you is you've taken like this passion that you have. You saw what health and wellness did for yourself. You saw what diet was able to do for yourself and how it amplified your quality of life. And you've been able to turn it into multiple businesses. You've been able to help thousands of people, and you're just getting started. And you're a true testament to like the hustlers of a couple years back, like the Gary V disciples of like, you can find something that you're passionate about. You can find anything, and you can turn that into something that's full time, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to be the Joe Rogans of the world where like, hundreds of millions of people are tuning into you, but you can make a damn big impact with a community of people rallied around something meaningful. And you guys are doing that. You and Brett and the whole team over there is doing that with Meat Mafia, with Noble Origins. So taking everything that you've kind of talked about so far, your journey with nutrition and fitness, going abroad, how did that formulate into a business, and what is like the ultimate goal and mission with what you guys are building, both with the Meat Mafia podcast and the Noble Origins and everything there?
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that too. Yeah, so our path to what we're doing, I feel like has been pretty grassroots in nature, like the way we kind of fell into all the opportunities that we had just through kind of following our passion and things that I think Brett and I probably ignored some of the obvious things that we probably should have just been focusing on from the get-go if money wasn't an issue. And I just think both of us had a true passion for health very early on in our lives that, again, the kid eating paleo and not drinking during baseball season, it's like, yeah, you should probably be doing something in the health space. And I always had a passion for being healthy. Like I was running in middle school and training in middle school and things like that. And so it was really just like an acknowledgement of our true passion and the shared passion that we had. And so we started, our reason for coming to Austin in the beginning was to run an Ironman together. And in that time, we were living together for a month, which ended up turning into 3 months. And when we were living together, we were cooking all of our meals together. We were having these deep conversations about just the trajectory of our lives, things we had missed out on, or opportunities that we hadn't really fully seen come to fruition in our baseball careers. And I think there was a chip on both of our shoulders in terms of what we wanted to do with our lives. And so it was incredible coming together and being able to come to the same realization at the same moment in time with someone that you knew. You're running an Ironman with this guy. You know what he's made of. He knows what I'm made of. And that click for us, and then us acting on it initially, was, we had this realization. We started writing online together. Brett's story is amazing in terms of him healing his gut. And we just started telling these stories about what's happened in the food system, how the food system is setting us up to continue to be sick if we don't start making changes. And then just giving the history behind it all. And we were doing that on Twitter, just writing content around it. And I think just that organic nature, we weren't coming at this with some grand idea. We didn't wake up one day and just be like, we want to start a tech company or we want to start a podcast media company. It was literally we're writing online. We started to build some momentum. And then in March of 2022, we had built up enough momentum on Twitter. And I was like, dude, I think we need to start expanding into a different medium because, one, I'm a little bit worried about censorship in the world of social media. But two, we need to start developing relationships with other people in this industry if we actually want to gain credibility in the long run. And so that's what started the podcast. And then over the course of doing the podcast, we started out doing 5 episodes the first month. And then after that first month, we were like, this is what we want to be doing. And we recorded 30 plus episodes the second month. And then it was just snowball from there, another episode or another month of 20 plus episodes. There was consecutive weeks in a row where we were doing a podcast a day early on. And it was really just to develop the skills and develop our understanding of the health space and meet people who are doing really cool things in the health space. And specifically people who are raising food and trying to contribute in a way that was really meaningful, got ranchers who don't have a voice and just trying to hear their stories and figure out what they're like. So I say all this because, our mission is really to just get really raw, true information out there about what it means to be healthy and try to change as many people's lives as we can when it comes to just taking ownership of your health. At the end of the day, the biggest problem in the US, maybe in general, is that we've outsourced so much of our needs when it comes to being healthy that people don't even know what to eat. They don't even know what foods they should be reaching for because they're expecting somebody else to tell them what to eat. And that to me is insanely concerning. If you don't know how to fuel yourself for a vital and prosperous life, how do you expect yourself to go on and take ownership of other things and start a business or start a family? And all of these things are just rooted in the same problem of just outsourcing this to somebody else. So our whole ethos is experiment, learn how to cook for yourself, learn how to go get connected with a rancher and talk to them about what they're doing on their farm that's different. So whether it's avoiding using pesticides or not using hormones in their meat, and just being able to ask the right questions and just give people that information through the podcast. And then with the products, it's how do we expand the reach beyond us just speaking into microphones? And that's products that people can see, touch, and feel, interact with, feel the difference in their own lives once they start incorporating these products into their life. And I think that is just an extension of the show, and it's obviously a really powerful extension of the show. I think it'll have a lot of positive benefits, but for us, the information is the key part. Getting information in people's hands so they feel confident making decisions for themselves when it comes to their health choices.
So you mentioned the food system in the United States, the healthcare system. I know it's just a nightmare, right? And most people just don't understand what's really going on and the foothold that they have on our lives and how much money they're dumping into like the media and the things that we consume. And you know, when we search certain things, there's a reason that certain things come to the top of the search bar, and there's certain things you won't find until 20 tabs deep
Totally.
on Google, right? So I would love for you to kind of just touch on this a little bit. Is like, what is at a high level going on, and why is it such a problem?
Yeah. I think the right place to start is just understanding the incentives of the system that we have in place. And a lot of that starts with subsidies. And so a lot of the subsidies that we have in place are from decades and decades ago. As we were coming out of World War II, we realized that we had this massive asset in the soil in the Midwest, and we would be able to grow crops and send that overseas. And so we put a lot of money towards subsidizing food that we could then create cheaper and cheaper food for people, which is, again, depending on how you look at it, a good thing in some ways. And now we're realizing that it's not always a good thing to just think of your food as this cheap source. But I say the subsidies point because we're funneling money that is coming out of taxpayers' dollars into corn, soy, and wheat, which we know now at scale, the amount of corn, soy, and wheat that we're eating on a day-to-day basis is just generally unhealthy. And a lot of it ends up going into processed foods. So the way our money is being allocated is the root of all issues. And it comes down to the subsidies. It comes down to the incentives that our system is built upon. And the incentives on the food production side of things are governed by the subsidies that we have in place that essentially just keep this system propped up. Farmers are incentivized in some cases not to grow crops because they just collect a paycheck from the government and they harvest their land and send off their crops to these other companies to then go bread and cereals and all the other sorts of processed foods with it. But then on the healthcare side of things, we have this insurance model that's like effectively keeping people sick by not prioritizing preventative things and just being there when people need the, you know, when they're in a situation where they have diabetes and need to go to the hospital and get some sort of procedure done on them. So I just think like the entire model is predicated on money not being like the incentives are just totally off. And we're directing people's behavior to think that, you know, food like corn, soy, and wheat are okay to eat. And then as they go through the system when they're sick, inevitably they'll have some level of care because they haven't been taking care of themselves to begin with by putting high quality food in their bodies. So in my mind, it's like, how do we build a system where the right foods are being incentivized to being raised and grown, and people don't have to spend all their time in the hospitals because they're sick from dietary consequences.
Yeah, so there's, I mean, gosh, man, it's crazy to think about all that. And but then you go into like these, you know, impoverished neighborhoods, and you like, how do you tell them that like going to McDonald's it's like not the right thing to do because they have 3 kids to feed, and you can feed your family for $3,
Yeah.
versus it's harder to pay, you know, $9 for a pound of beef and things like that. So I totally hear you, and I'm on page with you, and that's just like my first thought is like,
Me too, man.
yeah, how do we fix that?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you how we don't fix it. And it's like, if we keep going down the same trend, it's like, what does the amount of poverty in the US look like if everyone is sick? That number of people who are impoverished, I think, would get way higher if we continue to go down this path of incentivizing like really cheap and nutritionally cheap food to be made. And so it's like it's an incredibly complicated issue, but I do think that there's ways where we can bridge the gap and start to like rewrite the incentives so that we are supporting people who are doing things regeneratively and doing things the right way, and start to get that flywheel of building the system that actually promotes true health. And it's not going to happen overnight. Like, it's going to take decades and decades to unwind what's happened. in terms of just like the big structural shifts that need to happen. And maybe it's something, I mean, right now, 91% of people are like categorized as metabolically unhealthy. And so like, what do we do at that point when that whole group of people just continues to get sick because their body doesn't even know how to properly create energy for itself? So it's kind of alarming and fearful, but I try to say everything with like, there is a way out, and it's through just contributing and building the parallel system instead of just trying to like fix what's already broken. Like I just think something entirely new needs to be built outside of the current system.
So you brought up regenerative farming there too. So you see that a lot now. It's like regenerative beef, regenerative meats. What exactly is that for somebody who might not understand? Like what does that mean? What is a regeneratively farm? What is a regenerative what is regenerative farming? Why is that important? And how is that going to benefit the soil, benefit um, our health in general?
Yeah, so regenerative farming is a self-contained ecosystem that requires no external outputs to create the food that's on that property. And there's probably some technicalities to that, but in general, that's how I would think about it. And so what that means is these farmers have to understand the systems of nature and address the problems that you'll run into on a farm by incorporating different animals onto the farm or different species of crops onto the farm so that they mitigate some of the issues when it comes to pests or weeds, or lack of nutrients in the soil. And so what these regenerative farmers will do is just create multi-speciation, which is just having, 10 farm animals on the property that all serve a different role in creating a healthy ecosystem that thrives. So it's really just raising food in line with as nature intended. And so there's no herbicides, there's no pesticides, there's none of the chemicals being sprayed on your food. And what that does in the long run is it creates really rich topsoil that holds carbon, sequesters carbon out of the atmosphere. It holds more water in the soil so that that soil is then fertile for the next time you go to plant crops, or, you go and want to plant the next thing. It's that soil is ready to raise a nutritious piece of food. Whereas the other system is tilling the soil, which is essentially using a massive piece of machinery that rips up the topsoil, and then the sunlight hits that soil, dehydrates it, kills all the nutrients in the soil, and then they need to use genetically modified seeds to plant into that soil. Those genetically modified seeds are built to be resistant to any of the harmful effects that some of the pesticides or herbicides might have on it, so it can live even though you're spraying chemicals on it, and everything else in the soil dies. So what that does is there's no nutrients in the soil. There's nothing being absorbed by that plant other than the chemical fertilizer that's they're putting on the soil. And you essentially just have dirt at the end of the day, and it's not really full of life. And that microbial system, like the things you don't see, is the whole essence of soil. Like there's a life beneath our feet when you have rich soil, and that is actually very, very important when it comes to raising food the way we're supposed to raise it.
So why do these idiots like Bill Gates keep buying up all the farmland and are literally destroying our soil, and they think that for whatever reason, like there's all the data in the world out there now to show that regenerative farming is literally the only way that we are going to be able to like start to reverse climate change in the food production system, save our soil. Why do so many people still believe that these fake meats are going to save the planet?
Yeah. I think that they're trying to come up with optionality for like solving a very complex problem. So like right now, if the entire country were just be like, let's go regenerative, it wouldn't be possible. So I don't, I don't know what Bill Gates' incentives are. Like him buying up all the farmland. Like read articles where
He owns
dude,
more farmland than
he owns the
anybody
most farmland in the
in
U.S.,
the
which is terrifying.
US. So scary.
Yeah, yeah. But I do think I mean, he funds a lot of crazy shit. So like you know, I'm not going to let him off easy, but like there's a part of like I went through his investment fund and like looked at the different areas that he's researching, and he's researching regenerative farming, but he's also investing heavily in alternative meats, which I just like wholeheartedly disagree with. And maybe that's like him. He's looking at this problem from uh like a view that, you know, humans are going to be able to create their own food at some point without the need to like raise food on the land.
Sure.
And I mean, I think that you could easily poke holes in that and say, like communist doctrine is basically wrapped around the idea of being able to control the food system, because if you can give people bread, they are not going to riot and they're happy and they're able to live a surf life, but they're just part of the system. And so yeah, I think like he definitely has an agenda. I don't want to necessarily put too much of my tinfoil hat on right now, but I do think that like there are a lot of nefarious actors out there, and the way that he's approached this whole idea of fixing the food system is not how I would do it. And I do think that like the idea of thinking that, you know, cell grown meat or lab grown meat being good for us is a very scary thought. I think nutrition is a backwards looking concept. Like we came from somewhere, and trying to deviate that through these new introductions to the food system is a really scary thought. And I don't think that we should just put all of our eggs in that basket, or, you know, will I entertain the idea? Like, I just don't think that like lab grown meat is something that people should be putting in their bodies at all.
Yeah, and I mean, it was crazy. Like when I was in college, I took a class on environmental. It was like business in the environment or something like that, and like super interesting stuff to hear that, you know, a third of the world's food production ends up getting wasted. Like a third of the food that gets like processed.
Dude, I think it's higher than that. I think it's like 50%.
This was a couple of years ago, so
Yeah.
it's probably higher than that now.
Yeah.
You're right.
Even 30 to 50.
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
insane.
30 to 50% is nuts, and like, I guarantee you, like most of like it's not the regenerative meats. Like that's not getting wasted. Like it's the process. Like how much energy is used like going into these processed, you know, food lines, right? And like packaging, and then that creates the you know, the microplastics that are getting into the soil, that are getting into the ocean, getting into the foods that we eat, the fish that we eat, and then we're consuming that. Like nobody's talking about that.
Yeah, there's a massive trade-off. And like you were saying, the whole regenerative model is predicated on the idea of limited waste. Like you're not shipping in pesticides, herbicides, chemical fertilizers from Ukraine that, you know, you're thousands of pounds of that stuff is getting shipped in from overseas and being put on our farmland. And everyone wants to talk about carbon footprint or like greenhouse gas emissions that's happening. It's like this whole process of factory farming is so energy intensive, but when you can create a system that is a closed loop system, like a lot of these farms that we've talked to on the podcast have been modeling their farms after, you don't waste much. Like, yeah, there's probably a little bit of waste here and there, but when it comes to the actual system, everything just mimics nature, and there's no need for any of these outside resources outside of just processing the animals or processing the crops and then shipping it to the end consumer. So yeah, I think a lot of people overlook the fact that the amount of energy that's being poured into lab grown anything is massive. And sure, like the people who are behind the scenes on the lab grown side of things will say, well, when we scale this and when we do this and when we do this, that energy usage will go down. But it's still not going to be close to the trade-off of a natural system that basically runs on its own because you have the right systems in place with the multiple species on the land doing their job. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's been the most like profound thing that one of the guests that's like has there been anything where that just like left you speechless that you found out from many of the experts that you've gotten to talk to?
The food waste one is one for sure. Like when Joel Salatin on our first podcast with him said 50% of food is wasted. And I was like, well, that's the problem right there. Like, if we can fix the waste problem, that's the problem that you mentioned before around the economics behind food and people not being able to afford food. If we didn't waste 50% of our food, I mean, then, quality and cost should be positively affected by that. Yeah, when he said that, I was blown away. Another one too, this is a little bit off topic from what we were talking about before, but Taylor Collins, who's the founder of Epic Provisions, was talking about he and his wife's journey from vegan to animal based, and how they went through this entire process of her being an Ironman athlete and being near death with some of the things that she was dealing with. And she was a vegan during the time, and none of her doctors could figure out what was wrong with her until like the 10th doctor told her, hey, what are you eating? What does your nutrition look like? And she told him that he was vegan. He was like, go home and eat a steak, and let's see how you start feeling. And so she went home and ate some meat.
I feel like we
And
can solve a lot of problems if doctors just told people to go home and eat a steak.
just like I mean, there's follow nutrient density is like the thing you got to chase with the food stuff. And the animal kingdom is home of nutrient density. It's the most nutrient dense foods on the planet. And yeah, beef is high up there on the list of things everyone should be incorporating in their diet. But he said, like, in this tone that, like, I can't, like, it was like so piercing. He's just like, if she had stayed on a vegan diet, she would have died. And I was like, whoa, that's crazy. That was the type of stuff she was dealing with. So, just like, yeah, little moments like that, that I think just like maybe the timing of it, they just like stand out, where it's like, man, this is a lot of the information that we're being fed in terms of like what people should be eating is just like misguiding people. And she obviously like fell down that trap and reversed a lot of this stuff, and then ended up founding a company, and now she has a ranch. So like she's totally gone 180, but their whole story was crazy with Epic.
Dude, man, I mean, we could go down this rabbit hole all day long, which I would love to
100%.
do. But there are some other things that like I really, really want to discuss with you. And, one of those being just like building something meaningful.
Mm.
And I see that's what you're doing. I see you guys waking up at 4 a.m. every day. And then I listen to the podcast, and you're recording from your closet
The closet interest.
at midnight. One, I'm like, does Harry sleep? I don't think so.
Bro.
You're running multiple businesses. All of them are mission driven, and that is something to be said right there. We just chatted a little bit before this podcast, saying that you guys have some really, exciting things that even just, today are happening. So how did you guys go from writing threads on Twitter to now interviewing some of the world leaders in the health, not just the health space, but you're interviewing just leaders in general who are making a positive impact on this world? And your guys' platform is just incredible. So how did you take a step backwards, like writing threads on Twitter as I know you guys were like fake Mafia characters to now running multiple businesses, like being leaders in the space down here in Austin. Like, I'm just really, really interested to hear, because we spent so much time together, and I really haven't heard a lot about the growth and evolution.
Yeah, I could chalk it up to a few things. I think our prior experience is actually really important in understanding like how we're approaching life right now. I touched on like the baseball stuff. Like, Brett and I just think both had a similar taste in our mouths leaving the sport, feeling like we had so much more in terms of our ability. And that's like a tough feeling to get over and just like go along your way, at least for me. Like I had a feeling that I wasn't really answering the call. Like, I had so much potential, but just was leaving a lot on the bone. And even in my corporate job, like, yeah, I was doing a good job for the job, but what gifts have I been given that are just being contained by me staying in this role? And am I moving at the speed that I want to be moving? And I know for both of us, me and Brett, I think we had very similar answers to all those questions, where it was like, we're not moving at the speed we want to. We don't like this feeling of having a cap on what we're able to do with our time and energy. And we are the type of people who want to stay up until midnight and wake up at 4 and just go. And I think we both came to the realization that we had a lot of unanswered questions that we needed to figure out for ourselves as guys in our late 20s. And I don't think either of us would have been able to progress forward if we didn't take those leaps and just go all in on something. And so the nature of how we got into all this was essentially being like, there's no plan B for us. Like, plan A is just like figure out where our hearts want to be and just go all in on it. And so when I first got down here, I was working on a business idea with a guy in town who had started a number of really successful CPG companies. And I was originally applying to be his chief of staff. And that didn't materialize because he ended up not hiring for the role. I was like negotiating with him on what, like, being a part of his team. And then I ultimately ended up just being like, I'm so at the end of the road with this job. I want to like pitch him on this idea of starting this company and him being a partner in it or a mentor. And so I did that and he was excited about it. He gave me this, like, the soft yes. And I was like, look, I got this guy's attention who started like 3 or 4 super successful companies. The idea that I won't be able to go out and do the same thing if I really need to is obviously just like, I did it once, I could do it again. And so that gave me the confidence to quit the job, go down here to work on this idea. That idea ended up not materializing, mostly because I saw something with what I was doing with Brett when I first got down here, and I was like, this is my guy. Like, I need to be doing something with him. Like, we just ran an Ironman together. We've got this similar story of just like wanting more and similar aspirations for what we thought our futures could look like. And he was someone who just challenged me, like made me want to eat better, like pursue bigger goals, go after life in a more aggressive way. And like that whole pre-story is very important for like what we've started to do, because I feel like it's kind of like the elastic band pullback, and then now we're just like firing, right? And so once we started writing threads, Brett Brett, I think, like, discovered a gift for telling stories, and I was good at it, but he had a few stories that really like took off and went viral. And within like 6 to 8 weeks, our Twitter accounts like were blowing up, and we're like, just built this almost, it was like almost like playing sports again. When you like get a win, you're just like addicted to the feeling of winning and progress and doing well. And the fact that we got that so early on, that validation so early on, was intoxicating at the beginning, and it led us to want to do more stuff. And that was the podcast. And the same thing happened with the podcast. It was like we did 5 episodes the first month, 35 the next month, and we were just like, let's go. Like, we were a little bit, I think our style is like velocity over trying to make everything perfect at the beginning. And obviously that like can be a bad thing at certain points, but at the beginning it's probably the best mentality you can have, because you're just like, I'm just going to throw myself into this. We're going to go all in and see how we can build something. So a lot of this was just like this unfulfilled potential that we felt like we both had, and it was a very shared trait. Like, I remember Brett and I were legitimately walking on the Charles River in Boston together, actually running, and we both asked each other what our biggest fear in life it was, and it was the fear of not living up to our potential. And like, that to me is a moment that I'll never forget, because it was like, okay, so this guy wants to train for an Ironman with me. Like, what else could we do together? And that shared the shared energy and like that camaraderie feeling is the best. I mean, you probably feel it with Sean and the guys on your team at Upspace. It's like, once you get in the room with the people who know your frequency and are just like moving at the same speed, it's unbelievable. Like, it pushes you to grow so much more than you could possibly do on your own. And I think a lot of the business stuff has just come from our one, like, lack of what we were getting before. We were like in this like fasted state. Like, we just needed to be fulfilled and find that purpose. And both of us are purpose driven people. And then two, just like realizing that we had this purpose in us. Like, these health stories were like totally part of our past that we were just kind of ignoring, and realizing that if we had faith, if we believed in what we were doing, we could build it into something that is bigger than what we could even realize. And so a big part of it was just continuing to believe that we could get better guests, or believe that we could launch a product on the back of the podcast, and just these affirmations of just continuing to go for a little bit more and a little bit more. And I said it earlier, but a lot of it has felt very organic and natural and like grassrooty, because we didn't have a plan to start a protein powder a year ago. Like that wasn't in the playbooks, and now we've launched it and it makes total sense. Like it was the biggest question that our audience was asking us, or one of them was like, where do we get really high quality protein powder from? And we were like, well, we can solve this problem for our audience. Like we can put something together. And yeah, I just think that the lack of fulfillment before has funneled into just the energy that we bring to the table now, where it's like, yeah, we know what it's like to feel like we're not getting enough out of life, and don't want to go back to that.
What I admire a lot about you guys too is how you're very open about faith,
Mm.
and it's something you and I have connected deeply on. You know, I went to Thrive with you and Brett for the first time. It was a profound experience, and
Dude.
I wasn't even supposed to be there that day. That was like the crazy thing was
Really?
Matt invited me, and then he texted me the night before. He's like, "Yo, I got COVID. Like, I can't go tomorrow." So I was just gonna go to Red Rocks, and then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna text Harry. And you and I we met, but we weren't like boys at that point.
Yeah.
And you were like, yeah, dude, let's do it. Let's grab coffee at Proud Mary, and then we'll head over. And just seeing how like happy you guys were to just walk into church on Sunday and see that like tight community, and seeing you guys now like giving the announcements on Sundays and hosting us on Monday mornings at your house, and just this real strong community that we're building. And listening to lots of your podcasts now, and you guys sharing your stories of faith and having guests open up about their faith as well. What role has that played in the building of your businesses, the communities, and ultimately, the pursuit of fulfillment in your mission?
Yeah, man. I think it continues to play a bigger and bigger part every day as we continue to grow in our faith and continue to put it at the forefront of everything that we're doing. I would say early on, like this time last year, um, Brett had just moved down to Austin. I was basically solo going to Thrive, and he was going to church in San Diego. But I was still developing my faith at that point and figuring out what role it was going to play in my life. Like I was dating a girl at the time, and we would go consistently. Like her and I would go. And I saw it starting to change things inside of me, just how I was approaching these decisions, just giving me a framework for how to think through things, how to interpret spirituality. And I was just like, it was having a profound impact on me pretty early on. And I grew up going to Sunday school and going to church, but I don't remember it. Like I remember being very interested in it, but never it having that like anchoring feeling. And I think it took me taking a risk and really just being on my own and testing my faith in a lot of ways, with like starting a business and not having an income, and just like taking the leap of faith, as they say, to get connected with my faith in God and understanding the role I wanted that to have in my life. And so Brett and I have definitely continued to grow in all those areas, but the community aspect of it is the best. Like showing up to a small group on Tuesdays at Natasha's has been the coolest experience for me. One, because it's like so genuine. You sit down on the couch with a group of people who are all at different points in their walk with faith, and we're all just sharing things that are happening in our lives as it relates to some scripture that we're dissecting. And there's something that I had never experienced before, which was the community aspect connected through faith, and trying to live life the right way with a group of people that like I had just not been exposed to. And so for me, I was like, I just need more of this, and started craving it. And so now it's a huge part of everything that we're doing. And you mentioned like the men's group that we're doing on Mondays, like in the past 2 weeks, man, like the level of growth that I felt just by bringing that quality of people together and being able to have those types of conversations is like, I'll never be able to go back. Like, it's something you never go back from. It's only forward from here with that stuff and continuing to grow it. So, yeah, I think like my relationship with God has never been stronger. And I just like continue to want to find more ways to serve and just be of value to other people. And, yeah, live a life that like is totally in line with what I believe to be true. And, you know, I love the fact that there's a community in Austin now that's forming around this, because one person alone, it's like the scripture we read, right? Like the parable in Matthew 25, where they talk about the one bagger who buried the bag. It's like, yeah,
Freaking one bagger.
if you bury that bag, man, you don't get to see the benefits of how how transferring the word to other people and the benefits of having faith can have on a group. And I think that's kind of like the magic, is seeing other people come into this and like feel like they're getting something out of getting closer and closer to scripture.
What does it feel like to have a relationship with God?
Mm. Yeah, it's like, dude, it's comforting, man. Like there's definitely been moments over the past year where I've called on, I've just been in need of more strength and in need of more guidance, and being able to, one, open up scripture and find answers and read about different ways to navigate different situations or how to approach life, or just leaning to the power of prayer and the idea that, hey, there's a path that's already laid out for you, and all you have to do is believe and have the faith, and that path will illuminate itself more and more as you continue to walk. Like, that to me is the real power of believing. And you know, I couldn't imagine living life any other way than I am right now with this newfound faith. And like, you know, 2 years ago, I think it would have been more of a foreign concept for me, but it's like, it's been life changing.
Bro, so you were there for me in my literal darkest hour.
Mm.
And I felt this like crazy like bond connection with you since that day.
Mm.
I feel like our friendship and relationships only gotten stronger since then. And I would just I'm still like just trying to process this whole this whole thing. And I hear my mom and Sean and Nick and everyone who was there, like, you stayed with me from the time it happened until the time I woke up the next day, and when I think about that, like, I get very like emotional,
Mm.
and like I just have so much like love and gratitude for you. And I really just would love to kind of hear your perspective of like from what just like what happened that day, and like
Mm.
what did you feel spiritually, because I know like for me obviously like it was very it's been very hard since then, but I also feel like this is like rebirth for me, and God, it's happened to me for a reason, but I can't even imagine the trauma that like you guys who were there with me on the track that day had to go through, and like what if I didn't wake up, um and so I'm interested to hear like what happened that day from your perspective, and spiritually, like internally, what how did that affect you, and how has it affected you moving forward, because this story, it just it goes, you're a part of it, like you're always going to be a part of this crazy thing that happened to me, um and I'm very interested to hear spiritually how, if at all, it's had an effect on you.
Yeah, dude, it absolutely has. And yeah, definitely, it was one of those moments where, like, you know, my like perspective on just um, life will never be the same. Like, I saw someone I care about lying on a track, lifeless. And, um, you don't get called to be there for people in a real way in life all that often, like in a real way. And I just, from the moment that we met, there was something about you that I knew was different. And it was in Squatch's parking lot. I met your mom too. Was this the second time we met?
We met in the sauna the one time.
That's right. I always
But like,
forget the sauna.
yeah, but we really never. It was just kind of like, hey, what's up, man?
Yeah,
Oh, you're Henry. Like, yeah, no, we like knew of each other, but
totally.
it wasn't really until like I moved down here
Yeah.
that we brothered up.
Yeah. There's just yeah, from the conversation I had with you and your mom in the parking lot, like I've just felt this connection with you, just lots of similarities, like played college sports, parents are divorced, your relationship with your mom, like not all this stuff came up in that first conversation, but like hearing you and your mom talk about you listening to our podcast on the entire ride down from Philly to Austin, I was like totally touched by it, man. Like, and like that's like in a lot of ways, like a lot of people, I feel like, even my best friends from home, like haven't engaged in the podcast to that level. So, like, I just have felt this connection with you for a lot of reasons, and another reason is like I have a younger brother who's your age, and he's gone through a traumatic experience where he was in the hospital and I wasn't able to be by his bedside. And you know, I was just like as soon as I met you, I knew the type of person you were, and I knew you would be the type of person who would be sitting by my bedside if the roles were reversed. And so I guess that day was wild. Like my plans for that day originally were go to the track, run the time mile with you guys, go to a sampling for Noble, and be on my way. And I ended up deciding, waking up and my hamstring was not feeling great, so I just ran 3 miles before everyone got there, and then just was there to support. And I remember, first lap crushing it, second lap crushing it, third lap crushing it, and you and Bray were running together for most of the time. And I remember I walked down to the last corner that you turned around, and I was sitting there running with you as you finished your last lap, and seeing you walk to the edge of the track and like really looking like you're just trying to catch your breath in a way that was like any athlete has seen someone who's fully exerted themselves try to do. But you isolated yourself to the edge of the track, and all the other guys, Gus, Bray, me, were sitting there talking, and out of the corner of my eye, I'm just like seeing what looks like you were just like continuing to struggle. And so like when I went over and like realized what was happening, like immediately just like act mode, you go into like, we got to do something here. So it was clear that you were going through something, got the ambulance on the way. And yeah, man, like when you first went into cardiac arrest, I was obviously terrified, but then you came out of it for whatever reason, adrenaline or whatever, and were speaking to me, trying to get me to not have the ambulance come.
So did I like go down and go unconscious and then wake back
Yeah,
up?
you were unconscious and came back to it. I would think because of like adrenaline kicking in. Who knows? But I mean, it's one of those things like you're looking back, it's like, what? Like, and then like the like worst part of it all happened after you have been talking to us, which is you like losing consciousness again. And then luckily the firefighter was there talking to us, and you had lost your pulse. And I mean, dude, I remember like being on a knee, touching your arm was cold, and just praying and being like just deep in prayer, like watch over him, make sure he's okay. And just like feeling a sense of comfort, but feeling a sense of like, like be there. Like, even though there's, just be by your side. And, get the right people there. Like, got your mom on the phone, talk to her, and just like texted your brothers, just like trying to like handle the situation. Like, so much was out of the control of anything I could do. So it was like, just do what I can. And yeah, dude, I mean, I also think about like your mom too in that whole situation, just like her her feeling, just knowing that someone was there was important to me. Like, knowing that she knew me, we had met in the parking lot. I'm like, okay, like that'll give her some peace of mind that like there's at least somebody there who she's met before. And so yeah, like, dude, spiritually, I just like can't even describe like the feeling of feeling like you're not sure if your friend's gonna make it, to like middle of the day when the doctors were like, he's gonna be okay, and like just feeling that sense of relief. And still at that point you weren't awake or conscious, but just like knowing that you were gonna be all right, and kind of being in that, I mean, being in that place of like just not knowing was yeah, I mean, it was something I'll never forget. But uh you you had, there were just yeah, I can't even describe, I can't even put into words like the feeling that other than like God's presence was there, that presence was there that day. I was almost even deciding not to show up that day, and not saying that like that's a big part of the story, but like just feeling um like yeah, I was the you know just yeah, I can't even like imagine not being there. Like, I remember feeling just the feeling of being like so glad that um I was there, because yeah, I just like had that connection with you from the beginning for all those different reasons. I was like, yeah, just and just yeah, now just being so grateful that you're here, you're okay. Um and we have this, Brett and I were talking about on the drive over, this eternal bond that like it almost feels like you've known someone for like 10 years. Like, it's like sped up time in terms of getting to know someone, because you've gone through something crazy together. Uh, and yeah, man, I mean, there was there was a massive spiritual component to that whole day. And um, it was crazy, traumatic, but at the end of the day, the other side of all of it was the biggest amount of like love and appreciation for you and for life that like I've seen with my own two eyes in my life. Like, just the people who showed up, your mom coming from Philly to like be down there for you, and just the way you've responded to all of it has been like the most admirable, like fault, like bounce back. And I'm sure it hasn't been easy, but just like honestly, just that feeling like that you are just making this part of your path because it's what was intended to be. Yeah, I'm like just like incredibly impressed with like how you've handled it all. And yeah,
See, I keep learning new things about it, man. Like, I didn't know that like I went down completely and then came back and then was like coherent. I knew that like I was coherent at some point, but I didn't know that I had like went down, came back, and I knew that I was like telling you no, like I don't
yeah,
need
man. You said,
anything.
Harry, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good.
So bizarre.
Yeah.
But I I just want to say, one man, like I love you. Like, I really
Love you too,
truly
bro.
do. And the lesson that I have learned from all this from you is that, you know, God is going to test us at certain times, whether it's as big as something like where you had to show up, where you showed up for me, or it's something as small as when a friend who's having a bad day calls you, says, "Hey, man, I need someone to talk to," and you choosing to say, like, "Yeah, I've got so many things on my plate. I don't have time right now." And he calls us when we least expect it to step up and serve others in whatever way that is. I was listening to a YouTube video by Pastor Craig Rochelle, I think his name is,
Okay.
who's is a absolute stud, but he was talking about how, the kingdom is focused on service and not status. And I think that if we all put a little more emphasis on like, how can I serve others? How can I serve the world? Rather than how many followers can I gain on social media, or how much money can I put in the bank account, or how many what's the square footage on my house, or, how many freaking cars do I need? Like, I see guys like you and Brett who have put none of that at the forefront. You guys started this business with, just your savings on the line, and went and made something happen based on the value that you were providing to people and the service that you're providing through the knowledge, the information, and the education that you're able to share throughout your platforms. So all this is to just say, man, like, I wake up every day and I'm not kidding. Like, I I think about you, and I think about Nick, who was there that day. I think about Sean, who flew in. I think about my mom. I think about um, there's a lot of other people who showed up for me, but you specifically, like, I don't know if I would have made it if you hadn't been able to, if you hadn't called the ambulance in time, or um, you know, my mom, like, what she must have been going through, and like at least knowing that there's a familiar voice there. Um, I don't know what you told her there, but like, I'm just in such a state of gratitude for you, and I know that this is like a testament. This is like a part. We share this story together,
Yeah, man.
And this is a story that you're like. I could see just how impactful it's been, like, for you, and just, I don't know, I'm like starting to ramble and struggle for words, but all
Well,
this is to say is like, I am just so like grateful for you and your ability to just show up without question each and every day for your mission.
yeah, man, it's important. And I just, we could make thousands of dollars, millions of dollars. We could go to zero, but I want to encourage, um, people through everything that we're doing to find their gifts and give those gifts out. Like, that is, I just remember feeling the feeling of not like like embracing what's been given to me and the ability that um, I have. And I don't mean that in like an egotistical way. I just mean like there's so much good that can come from just going where your heart wants you to be. And yeah, dude, I mean, that day was your rebirth. And like, yeah, I'm like the third party watching your life right now. You're player one, but I'm so excited to see what you do with this new found perspective, with this new, like, it's almost insulting to the earlier version of yourself to say like you didn't have an appreciation for life beforehand. But when something like this happens, it's like, how can you not just like your post today, your story, it's like the sun. It's like just feeling the sun on your skin, man. And yeah, I obviously like will never know what it feels like to be exactly in your shoes. But like, yeah, that bond that we'll share forever is going to be unmatched. And I just, dude, I'm so pumped that you're down here, like, and you have a similar mission focus for everything that you're doing. You put your heart and soul into everything that you do. Like, those are just like the shared things. I'm like, dude, Dom is my guy. Like, I'm so about what you're all about. And just like the way you approach life, I just think so many people draw inspiration from it. And yeah, man, like I was saying, like, you're player one. I'm sitting here on the side. I'm like, I just think you have so much potential, man. And like, I hope I can just be here for part of the ride and just continue to give you encouragement along the way, because I think sky's the limits, man.
Dude, I really do greatly appreciate that. Like, I tell my friends up at home, I tell my family up at home, like, I look at guys like you and Brett, and guys like Noah, and just Bray, and like all these amazing people. Like, I mean, name 100 other amazing dudes, and like I'm like kind of like the young buck in this circle. So I just like I see the way that you guys carry yourselves each and every day, and it's in a way that is very intentional, and I appreciate that, and I'm beyond stoked to see where this life is going to take you, the plans God has for you, the Meat Mafia, for Noble Origins, and for all the amazing things that are in your cards. But I am curious of all the things that are circulating in your life right now. What's the one thing that really excites you the most?
Dude, the Monday morning men's group gets me so jacked up. Yeah, I think surrounding yourself with the quality of people that show up to that Monday morning run is something that most people will probably never experience in their life. And being able to help facilitate that and show up for people in a way that's outside of the standard realm of like, let's go, uh, let's go do some like business together, or just like transactional things. Like the nature of that group is very much just like this honest wanting to get better through building our faith and going on a little run together in the morning. You'll walk for now. Uh, but dude, that group just gets me so excited, man, because I see the way that people are getting engaged with this shared curiosity around building their faith and how they want it to be a pillar of their life. And like that's where like I'm like, what will happen 10 years from now from just this one group being a thing? And with the people that show up to that group, I'm like, this will be I guarantee you that the things that come out of that group 10 years from now will be more powerful and more influential in just the nature of how they grow than anything that we do outside of that group, whether it's Noble or the podcast. There's something about being able to sit across the room from a group of guys that you truly admire and just share thoughts on life and through reading scripture together.
Dude, I couldn't agree more, man. I'm so stoked for that. The growth that we've seen already in a couple weeks is just incredible. I got to ask my last question before we wrap this thing up. When you hear the words pure ambition, what does that mean to you, and how does it apply to your daily life?
When I hear pure ambition, I think about how ambition doesn't really have time for fear. And I think pure is like such a nice little partner to the ambition there, because like if you're just purely ambitious going after what your heart is being called to do, like fear just doesn't even play a role in how you chase after things. And yeah, like doubts will come into play, but when I think about pure ambition, I just think about like an unwavering confidence and a pursuit for something bigger than what you could possibly dream of. Second part of the question.
How does it apply in your daily life?
Oh man, I mean, bro, if I had a podcast for myself, I think it might be called the Pure Ambition podcast too. Yeah, man, I just try to approach every day with that pure ambition mentality, and just try to do things that are meaningful, that help other people, that can be a source of inspiration for other people. And when I'm at my best and feeling the best, it's when I'm fully all in on something. And that's what I think of when I think about pure ambition. It's just like there's only a plan A, your back's against the wall, you only have one path forward, or you have one path forward. And I just think that's like the edge, just wanting to or unwilling to see any other way but through.
Harry, you're a beautiful soul, my friend.
My man.
I appreciate you. I love you. Thank you for everything today. People want to check out all the amazing things that you got going on. They want to connect with you. Where are you hanging out?
Check out the Meat Mafia podcast on Instagram. Check out noble.origins on Instagram. And then we are on Spotify and Apple for the podcast. The podcast is the Meat Mafia podcast. And then I am Meat Mafia Harry on Twitter, which is where we got start. And that's, where a lot of the daily shenanigans go on.
Love it, brother. Much love for you. That's all we got.
Oh, man.
Thank you guys so much for tuning into today's episode. I wanted to give you all a heads up too that I launched a free community on the Upspace app where you can join, ask me questions, connect with like-minded individuals, follow my 4-week running and strength training program that has some dedicated mobility sessions in there as well, so that we can all optimize our health and fitness together. So if you're interested, head over to the App Store, download the Upspace app, and join the Pure Ambition community today. Love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.